around, who do I have to thank? And I said, oh, wait, it's us. But what we were doing is giving your money back to y'all. And so, Lynn was a definite big leader in that. Protecting our children, our election integrity. And it's also, so many times you'll hear folks who run and all they want to do is talk about big issues that they see on TV. And they forget about the things that if you don't do them back in your community, they don't get done. It's like redoing the college finance system for our community colleges and making sure Weatherford College, both in Weatherford and here in Wise County, will have the funds to be able to educate our kids for the jobs of tomorrow without having to go into debt to go to a four-year university if that's the pathway they choose. Those who get those CTEs, those certifications, those associate degrees, they become taxpayers instead of tax takers. And Lynn has led on higher education at our community college level as well as UNT and TWU. And we have somebody who's running who doesn't understand what a major driver for the economy and a skilled workforce that we would have if we didn't have TWU and UNT in our systems. I know next session, Lynn is already working on many of the tough things that we have. And as the old saying, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. And I know Lynn is knee deep into the water policy to make sure that we make sure every Texan and those 1,100 that move to Texas every single day have water for their future. We're talking about mental health care. And I know that Lynn and I have sat with Lane Akins, and we've sat with Tracy Murphy, the sheriffs, and we understand that 10 to 15% of our jails are filled with people that can't stand competency because of mental health problems. Lynn understands that. Lynn is not afraid to roll up his sleeves and work on those tough issues because you know what? Some people say, well, it just doesn't matter. You know what it does matter? When those inmates spend 500 days in your county jail, that inmate didn't pay for that. You paid for it in your property taxes. And the conservative thing to do is what Lynn's doing, is it addressing it right here, right now, and making sure we have the resources to get those people mentally competent to stand trial, and that way they can serve their sentence and get on down the road. When we talk about those sort of four pillars of what do we do for conservative government, it's education, it's healthcare, it's infrastructure, and it's our security. Our security with DPS and securing our border. But in that healthcare deal, rural healthcare matters, and Lynn understands that. He works with our hospitals, he works with our healthcare providers to make sure we're doing the conservative things that we need to continue on. And I cannot say how proud I am to stand here tonight and endorse Lynn Stucky as your next state representative. And Lynn, I know now that you finally got a microphone, I don't have to do all the talking, but
thank you guys.
What an incredible turnout. Over 400 people, sold out venue to come and support you. I think that's fantastic.
You know what, Senator, thank you for being here too. Senator Springer was house trained or house broke before he became a senator. So I got to work with him on the other side of the rotunda and then went across. I'm gonna miss you. He is retiring at the end of this year. He has been a partner in so many good things for the great people of North Texas. And brother, you have done an awesome job. I know that you're taking over a family business, and I know you'll be coming back down there to make sure that we're accountable to conservative wins. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Lynn. It's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you. Redistricting is always one of those tough ones. You were blessed. You got Wise County. I was unblessed. I lost Wise County. By the way, y'all probably all, I know JD has my cell phone. If Tan Parker's ever not doing his job, just text me and I'll go kick him. Tan's been a good partner as well. We've worked, and that's really what it is. And I know we've got a lot of state representatives here. If the state representatives have come out from other districts to show their support from Lynn Stucky, could stand up. Let us thank you for being here.
Representative Patterson, Timish, Bumgardner, Richard Hayes. Thank you guys for coming out. We have a former state rep, Dan Huberty, who came all the way from Houston. Dan, where are you at? Thank you for coming.
You know, an incredible show, and so thank you again. It's been an honor. We need Lynn. I mean, the Texas Miracle didn't happen from just folks going down to Austin, yelling and screaming and not getting anything done. It takes workhorses like Lynn Stucky that knows and appreciates the values and what needs to get done for his district, and Lynn has done that. And Lynn, I think we have a special somebody that you may want to bring up.
Very special. We could sit up here all night long and talk about different bills that we passed and different things we've done, but there's a special young lady I want to come out here. Ainsley White, would you come out here, please? Many of you may know Ainsley.
Ainsley, come over here.
Yep.
Get in front of the ugly guys.
Yeah. She, in 2019, I want to say first, Senator Springer and I passed a bill on lemonade stands. You wouldn't think that's very important. Lemonade stands? Well, there's a lot of communities that were not allowing them. Not Runaway Bay, where she lives, but other communities in this state. But we made sure that didn't happen. But also, in the last couple of sessions, we passed a lot of wonderful pro-life legislation. And I think Jared Patterson, did you not look up how many abortions we had 2 years ago? Was it around 50,000? 50,000, and we had 34 last year? 34. Well, this young lady has had a lemonade stand for 5 years, is that right? 6 years. 5, okay, 5 years. And did your two sisters help you, Vera and Lola? Vera and Lola, can you stand up? They helped her with this. But over a 5-year period, Ainsley brought in $14,000. $14,000 for the Pregnancy Resource Center to take care of, as she said, the mamas and the babies. So thank you so much. In recognition of that, we have a resolution here from you. I won't read the whole thing, but thank you so much for what you've done. You're an amazing young lady. And I heard the governor say earlier she may be our next governor. So thank you for being here. You bet. Move on to the...
Wow, that is phenomenal. $14,000 raised to give to a pregnancy center to help the mothers and the babies. I mean, you know, that's just unbelievable at such a young age. You know, it lets us know that we still live in a godly world, that God is still amongst us. He's waiting for us to do the right things like she did, and it's just a phenomenon. I know that, you know, every now and then I drive through Runaway Bay, and so, you know, before I leave here tonight, I may need to give you a few $100s to make sure that I buy in advance the lemonade I'll stop and get next time. But, you know, it's just an incredible deal. Again, you know, the track record that Lynn has, that he has done for House District 64, the way he has served this community, he's jumped in, learned it, worked with your local leaders at FFA deals, at your schools, at the churches, at the chamber, at the EDC. He realizes you have to serve the whole community, not just the ones that like to yell and scream. And so it is why we need leaders like Lynn Stucky.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
So, but y'all didn't come to hear me talk anymore.
And you probably didn't come here to hear me either.
You know, but, you know, again, I appreciate y'all supporting it, supporting Lynn. You know, but at this time, it is my honor to introduce, you know, the best governor in the United States. The governor.
The greatest.
When we go through the accomplishments he has accomplished in 10 years that I've been blessed to serve with him, whether it's the economy. I think when he started, I can't remember if we weren't even in the top 10 if memory serves me. We're now in the top 8. We're number 8 in the world in GDP and an economy.
Texas alone.
He has created more jobs than any other state every year for 10 years. He continues to win the Governor's Cup. When we look at the pro-life champion things that we have done, it is under the leadership of Greg Abbott. When we realize that the federal government is failing Texans, Greg Abbott's leadership on the border is phenomenal. I remember I had a few people that were supporting your opponent that I think they're way off track. And I remember getting, because I used to represent, and I still got 20,000 people who got my cell phone. So they're all texting me. And these guys are down here in Decatur, they go, we don't think we should spend our tax dollars to send somebody to Chicago or Washington, D.C. that's illegal. And I'm sitting there going, you know what it costs in healthcare, education, and all the other things? And maybe the rest of the country will get a taste of what Texas is having to deal with. And through Greg Abbott's wisdom, we have now bused over 100,000 migrants to LA, Chicago, New York, and my favorite, Kamala Harris's house in Washington, D.C. So let's put our hands together for the greatest governor in the United States, Greg Abbott.
Woo! Yeah. Thank you for being here, Governor. So let's get this started here. There's a lot of folks excited to see you here and a lot of good things to talk about. And we're going to start with property tax relief. When I first met you in 2017 as a freshman, that was already something we were discussing, something that was very important, that we make sure people can stay in their homes. And last year we passed the largest property tax ever in history. Can you talk to us about the road to the latest $18.3 billion package and what it's going to take to keep Texas in the right path for property tax relief?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to this remarkable crowd right here in Decatur, Texas. It's been fun chatting with so many of you, shaking your hand, taking a picture with you, getting to know you. But there's one thing that many of you don't know about me, and that is the literally dozens, if not hundreds of times that I've been driving through Decatur, Texas as a kid growing up in Wichita Falls, heading to Fort Worth, you know the pathway. And I've seen you grow and what you're doing now, and it's just remarkable. But it's you all, he asked, so what is the pathway to property tax cuts? It begins with you. You and your voices have been loud and unequivocal. You're paying too much in property taxes in the state of Texas, and you're demanding that we reduce it. Now, we have this difficulty factor in that the state of Texas does not levy a property tax. The property tax is levied at the local level. So we needed to figure out ways in which, even though we don't levy it, we would be able to reduce it or lower your tax burden. And through that strategy, we were able to come up first with the reforms that were passed in 2019. And then we were able to pile more into it in this past session that leads to this result. Before the law that you passed and that I signed, everyone had a homestead exemption of $40,000. Now that homestead exemption more than doubled to $100,000. The first $100,000 of your home is not subject to a property tax in Texas. But as you all know, the biggest part of your property tax is your school district property tax. And so we wanted to ease that burden, and we used $12 billion of the property tax reduction to reduce those ISD property tax rates. The result is, if you look at an average $300,000 or $400,000 home, let's say in Decatur or Denton, wherever the case may be, for the tax bills that I have seen, the property tax bill has been pretty much cut in half as it concerns the school district property tax component. We were able to do that, however, because of one thing. And that's because you heard the senator talking about the different ways in which Texas ranks number one. This past year, we also ranked number one in a different way. Texas ranked number one in the United States for the biggest budget surplus. Now, some states, they may have a budget surplus, not as big as Texas, but if they have a budget surplus, they'll go take that money and use it to grow government and spend on government programs and things like that. But in Texas, we know whose money it is. That money does not belong to the state, does not belong in Austin, Texas. That is your money, and that's why we used that money to provide it back to you with the largest property tax cut in the history of our state. But let me add this. In Texas, we call that a good start. Because our economy is growing so rapidly and doing so well, I can tell you that when we go into this next session, we should have another about $20 billion budget surplus. If you send Lynn back to Austin, Texas to work with me, we will work together to use that $20 billion to cut your property taxes even more.
Thank you, Governor. Speaking of the economy, one of the priorities my priorities last session was to expand the career pipeline, and we heard Senator Springer talk a little bit about that. We had a bill together on that we did addressing that. But I wanted to thank you for supporting our initiatives. And as Texas see a record number of jobs added each month, how do we continue to expand the pipeline for the next generation of Texans?
So he talked about expanding the pipeline for the next generation. And the same answer for that applies to every generation. The pipeline is defined in one word, and that is opportunity. Texas is the state of opportunity where anybody can come here and be able to achieve anything. We provide that opportunity in several different ways. One is through the economic pipeline. The fact of the matter is that Texas is adding far more new jobs than any other state in the United States. What that means is for the next generation, that job is going to be there for you. If you're looking for a job, you want a job, or let's say you're in high school, you're wondering, am I going to be able to get a job after high school, after college, whatever the case may be. There is no other state in America that provides as much opportunity to get a job, especially the kind of job that you may be seeking. But let me just put some math behind what I just told you. If you go from the time of COVID until today, Texas is responsible for 35% of all the new jobs added in the entire United States of America. Texas is the land of opportunity. Another pathway that dovetails into that is the pathway of education. We've made reforms in K through 12, but we had extraordinary reforms in the community college program this year. There's a format that was used to structure this. Anybody here familiar with Texas State Technical College? Fabulous program. And I actually have an honorary degree from there because I brag about TSTC so much. Because their format is they do not get paid until their graduate gets a job. We try to instill the same thing in all two-year college programs so that we achieve this result, and that is our two-year college programs, most of their pay for what they get, the money they get from the state, is going to be based upon results of having students graduate with degrees so they can go immediately into the workforce, or with a degree and they go on to a four-year college. And importantly, all of these two-year colleges are to work with local businesses. If you are trying to manufacture a widget and you got to have an employee do X, Y, and Z, all you have to do is take the plans of doing X, Y, and Z to your local two-year college and say, hey, I need you to train students to be able to do that. I've seen it happen firsthand at a very prolific, effective two-year college program at Odessa College, where I announced this program to begin with. Every two-year college program is supposed to be doing this. So whether it be what we're doing in K through 12, changing the compensation for two-year colleges to make sure they're providing the skill training for the next generation to be able to get a good job, or whether it be our four-year colleges. When I first became governor, in my first State of the State address, I talked about the need for Texas to catch up with other states in four-year college research and elevating to have the best universities, because other states were ahead of us. And so I said, our mission is for Texas to lead the nation in Tier 1 research universities. And I'm proud to tell you, in Decatur, Texas tonight, Texas ranks #1 in the United States of America for the most Tier 1 research universities. But listen, we know that not everyone is the right path for them to go to a four-year university. Maybe not even a two-year college. So we created these other programs like apprenticeship programs that open the door of opportunity. An apprenticeship program is where a business that needs skilled employees, they'll participate in this state-organized and funded apprenticeship program and train these employees how to perform the skills. And I visited one of these work sites and got a tour of the program about how it worked and how they were doing welding and pipe fitting and things like that. And the person taking me on the tour, much to my interest, was an African-American woman. And she showed me the people in the training class at that time, and most of the people in the training class were women. And I got to talking to her about her life story, and she told me that 4 years before I met her, she was a homeless person. But she was able to use this apprenticeship program and then elevate through the ranks and be in the position that she was now. And she told me that she had just bought a home. So I said, you told me you were homeless and now you bought a home? I said, how much are you making? And she told me. So I said, so you've been through this apprenticeship program, worked your way up, and now you're making more than the governor of Texas. That's opportunity. But opportunity truly is what I try to symbolize every day to our fellow Texans. Y'all know, probably all of you know my story, how when I was 26 years old, I was out running and had an accident where the tree fell on my back and crushed my vertebrae, leaving me unable to walk. But it's the rest of the story that matters. You know, what matters is not how you're challenged, but how you respond to those challenges. But here's the point. By the fact that I literally had my life broken in half, but still got to where I am, shows that Texas is so much the land of opportunity that even a person whose life is broken in half can rise up and be governor of this great state.
Thank you, Governor. So we came pretty close to setting a record for constitutional amendments this last November. And one of the big ones for people here in Wise County, because when I moved to Denton County in '83, we had about 140,000 people. Now Denton County has over 1 million. Wise County is on the verge of massive growth. J.D. Clark has talked about it many, many times, our judge. But that Proposition 6 to increase the availability of funding for water projects, as these funds become available, what do you see as the next big step for Texas to protect the supply of water for these fast-growing communities?
So first, I will say that this is really just a start. This certainly is not a finish line. What was done, what needed to be done, but our highest demand going forward is going to be water, especially in regions that are not located in East Texas. So you go about 20 miles to the east side of I-35, and take it from there to Louisiana, there's going to be plenty of water. But west of that zone, which is everything definitely west of I-35, is going to be water short. We as a state have to work together to make sure that we have the projects in place that will ensure everything west of I-35 is going to have access to the water that it needs. And so one thing that this $1 billion fund will begin to provide will be the beginning part of helping to pay for things like the development. It could be reservoirs. It could be other types of water-based projects. It could be improving and updating the water infrastructure in a particular community. There are so many different strategies that can be tapped into to make sure that communities have water. Anybody here from Wichita County? Not really. I'm not seeing the hand, but were you there? Was it about 8 years ago?
Mr. King from Wichita County.
Was it about 8 years ago? Remind me of the year when Wichita County was literally a couple of days from running out of water. It was outrageous. And fortunately, the hand of God intervened and brought rainstorms that was able to begin to fill up Lake Wichita. We cannot have my hometown or other communities, Decatur or elsewhere, be facing that challenge. What that means is we have to use these sources that we have to be able to access and provide and transport, develop whatever methodology we can use to make sure that every community in the entire state is going to be able to access water. And you pointed out the punctuation point on this because of our rapid growth. Last year we added 475,000 people. The year before that we added 450,000 people. The growth is not going to stop. Right now in my office we have 350 economic development projects that will be bringing even more people to the state of Texas. With each person we bring to Texas, we need to be using that water fund to provide more water to the people across the entire state of Texas. So this is a start, a down payment on our obligation to make sure that every community in Texas is going to be able to access the water that it needs.
Okay, for the last one here, I want to spend a little more time talking about this one because you've been on the news a lot lately. It's the number one issue in the country, not alone the state of Texas. Last week, the Supreme Court made news by siding with the Biden administration's interference of our border security operations. And you made bigger news by telling the nation Texas will continue to fight to secure our border. Now governors and now many other governors from around the nation are backing your play. So let's start here. Where are we in the fight with the federal government?
We're just getting going. So, the Supreme Court issued that decision. And I knew that even though the decision was nothing but ambiguity, that no one really understood what they said or did, which was really just to send the case back to the Court of Appeals. But I knew that there would be confusion in Texas, confusion across the country. And so I felt the need to issue that one-page statement clarifying exactly what Texas's position is and why we hold that position. First, I pointed out in that statement the shortcomings of the Biden administration that put Texas into the position that I could invoke. Joe Biden, as a president, has failed the United States of America by refusing to enforce the current immigration laws. So never forget this very important fact. 4 years ago, we had the strongest border security plan in 40 years. 4 years ago, we had the fewest number of illegal immigrants crossing our border in 40 years because of 4 things done by President Trump. Remain in Mexico, Title 42, in catch and release, build a border wall. It's that simple. Joe Biden came into office and he eliminated all of those policies and he sent a message to the entire world that the United States border is open and anybody could come in. Since that time, record after record after record of illegal immigration numbers have been set. To put it in this context, the population of the largest city in the state of Texas is Houston, Texas, with a population of just over 2.2 million people. 2 years ago, the number of illegal immigrants apprehended coming across the border was 2.3 million people, larger than the size of Houston. This past year, more than 2.4 million people. In 2 years, we had 2 Houstons apprehended coming across the border. That's unacceptable. No one knows who these people are, what their background is, what danger factor they may provide, knowing, however, that many of them have been apprehended who are wanted on the terrorist watch list. People pay extra if they're on the terrorist watch list to not be apprehended? How many people have come across the border who were on the terrorist watch list who were never apprehended? No one knows the answer to that question. Hence, no one knows the danger that the United States of America is in right now. And so what I have done over the course of the past year, I've used my position as governor of Texas to set the stage by warning the president 8 different times, including a hand-delivered letter to him about exactly what he could do under current law. Under current law, the President of the United States has the power to deny illegal entry into the state of Texas or into the United States. And then, if they still get in, the law requires that the President detain any illegal immigrant who comes across the border. Because he has not done that, Texas is facing this imminent danger as well as an invasion. And so, after the Supreme Court came out, I knew that I needed to make clear. For one, Texas has declared under Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution, there is an invasion taking place on our border, and Texas now has the authority to engage in self-defense and defend our safety and our sovereignty as a state in the United States. Then just two more things about that, because I want to make sure you know the follow-up to that. Because it's more than just making a declaration. You saw what we did with that park in Eagle Pass, where we seized that park and we wired it up so there is no entry whatsoever. These are the important facts. Y'all had seen that location before on TV, where you'd seen thousands of migrants streaming across there and standing in queues and waiting to get on buses. And I said, we're not going to have that anymore. And so the Texas National Guard took it over. Here's my point. At a time and a location when thousands of people would be crossing in that very location, 2 days ago, there were 4 people who crossed in that location, all 4 of whom were arrested by the Texas Department of Public Safety. What we are doing as we speak right now is we're using the thousands of National Guard on the border to expand that process up and down the border. They have already laid down more than 100 miles of this concertina razor wire that has repelled more than 100,000 people and returned them back to Mexico. And they're adding more as we speak, as well as adding anti-climb walls. And speaking of walls, one last thing, and that is that you remember the border wall that Trump was putting up. You remember that some of it was left laying on the ground when he left. You may not know that Texas seized some of that border wall. And so we've used some of the border wall that was left behind, plus funding that's been provided by Lynn Stucky. So Texas either has already constructed or have under construction more miles of Trump's border wall than Trump constructed in the state of Texas.
Thank you, Governor. We just appropriated another $1.5 billion for another 100 miles of border, which we're going to have soon. And I know that a lot of people aren't real familiar with Operation Lone Star. Could you give a broad overview of what Operation Lone Star does? It started in March of 2021, and what the plan is there?
So Operation Lone Star was and still is an operation to respond to Biden's open border policies. And it was begun with deployment of National Guard and special deployment of Texas Department of Public Safety officers. And as Biden has further opened the border, we have further expanded the operation down there. There are encampments of National Guard and DPS officers up and down the entire border. We're either building the Trump border wall, building a razor wire concertina border barrier with National Guard and DPS officers behind it, or we're using other strategies to arrest people who are crossing the border illegally and being jailed for trespassing in the state of Texas. So we're using different strategies in different locations to provide as much control to the border as physically possible, knowing that because of the additional resources, Lynn, that you help to provide, we're adding more day by day as we speak to achieve the same success that we've seen in that park in Eagle Pass, Texas.
And we're getting a lot more cooperation by the landowners down there. We have 100 miles that is going to go up pretty fast here once we get going. So
exactly. So, and that's something a lot of people don't know, and that is most of the border is private property. A lot of people don't know how long the border is. You know the mileage maybe. The length of the Texas border is the same length as it is from Miami to New York City. It's a long border. And most of it is owned by private property owners, some of whom are pushing back. They were pushing back. Well, here's what they found. When one wall segment, think of a wall segment as wide as this room. When that is put up and you're the neighbor next to it, what happens? Exactly. They're going through your property. And so the neighbor next to you, they want it. And then the one next to it wants it. And so it kind of sells itself.
great point, Governor. So, Governor, I know you got to get on to Amarillo, but you're in one of the most conservative counties in the state, if not the nation. They support you big time here in Wise County, don't we? I know we have a lot of patriots in the room, and what can they do to help keep Texas strong for many years to come?
Well, it starts with sending you back to Austin, Texas.
Thank you.
We got to have conservative voices. We got to have people with a passion and a commitment to the values of the people of Decatur. I mean, think about this. The values are different across this country. And some of these leftist values are permeating across the Red River and going to Austin and going to Dallas and going to some other communities. Let me mention just this one thing that we got to emphasize, and that is, have y'all heard the name of Riley Gaines? Oh, yeah. This is that elite college swimmer, a woman who trained since she was just a little girl to compete and beat women in competitive sports. And she rose to the very top of the collegiate level. And then she was forced to swim in a swim meet against a man. She tied the man in the race. They gave the award to the man. That's wrong. Riley Gaines came to Austin and worked with Lynn and me. And working with Lynn, they passed a bill that came to my desk that I signed with Riley Gaines prohibiting men from participating in sports with women in the state of Texas. I use that just as one example because we have threats like this arising all the time with this leftist woke agenda. And we need you to work every day, sending to Austin, Texas, people who are going to have the type of values that you have, principles that you have, beliefs that you have, so that those beliefs will show up in the policies passed and legislation passed by people like Lynn Stucky. When we are able to achieve that perpetually, we know that that young girl who was up here earlier, who in her own right is a conservative hero, she and her sisters and every young boy and girl in this town will grow up in a state of promise where those children will be able to succeed just like we have been able to succeed. My goal and your goal is to make sure that every child in this state is going to have access to that brand of opportunity that we call Texas.
Thank you, Governor. I want to mention one more bill that we passed and that the governor signed. We had a terrible tragedy here about a month after I became their representative. Athena Strand was abducted by a courier and viciously murdered. Maitland is here, her mother, and she worked tirelessly with us at the Capitol to get that across the finish line. We now have Athena's alerts. Instead of Amber Alert that takes more time and does the whole state, the Athena Alert will be alert that can go out immediately.